Happy Football Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for the Fantasy Buzz podcast, and we are here at the beginning of week 2. Actually, Thursday night started the beginning of week 2, but,
That's right.
There's nothing like Football Sunday. So, yeah, sure. This is the beginning of week 2 of fantasy football, and, guys, we are here for you tonight. Today, we've got 2020 above me. I've got Cyclop above me here. Guys, how you doing today on this beautiful Sunday?
We're on top. Hey, it's week 2. Everybody, you're either 0-1 or 1-0 or however your leagues are, and you're looking either to jump back in it or keep going. So it's fun.
It's crazy. You think about it, it's only week 2, but it's a big week. You do not want to start off 0-2. 1-1, you're way in it. And 0-2, you're still in it. But, man, you're starting to learn a little more about your team, a little more about the players that you took gambles on, some of the guys that you invested heavily. There's some interesting questions that are going to be answered this week, but it's another exciting week in football. I'm pissed. I'm not getting a pedicure today when I'm watching. I'm going to go to Hooters. But either way, it's week 2 of football. I'm here with my boys talking football, and I'm psyched. I can't wait till 1 o'clock.
So it's not just whether or not you wanted to go 0-2 in fantasy football. It's also in the NFL, right? So
Exactly.
You've got teams like Buffalo, New England, and the stats are out there that, look, you go 0-2, the chances of making the playoffs are not as great. Fantasy football, I think, is a little different. I think you have an opportunity to recover. I think in fantasy football, you see what's going on, especially last week, and I'm an example of that. Some of the superstars on my team did not perform, and not just my team. There are a lot of superstars out there like Josh Allen, people that
Aaron
did not perform, Aaron Rodgers, that don't panic on, right? They're going to be okay. It's just a matter of matchups and seeing what's going to happen. And so that's what we're here for, guys. We are here to help you determine who to start, who to bench, some of the news. And then at 11:30, that's when the news starts trickling in about who's active, who's inactive for the games coming up at the 1 o'clock spot. So we'll be ready for that. So we're going to go through the positions. We'll talk about who to bench, who to start. I'm going to throw up the Google phone number in a second so that people can call in. But in the meantime, we got some news and notes about what's going around in the NFL. Guys, what's happening in the NFL?
All right, so I've got a list of, there's not a ton. The big name, of course, we know is that Josh Jacobs is listed as out. And some of the interesting chatter around that is everyone's thinking it's going to be a heavy workload for Kenyan Drake. And all of a sudden, there's a Peyton Barber signing. So now they're talking about him taking in a good portion or a portion of that lead back workload. And it might be Kenyan Drake as a passing catcher, as a pass catching back and change of pace. It's interesting how that surfaced. So obviously you're not starting Josh Jacobs.
Are you starting Kenyan Drake? Maybe I'm getting a little too ahead in our stardom sit-em, but is that somebody?
I think we'll wait for the stardom sit-em to hear that conversation, but I'm curious to hear Brad's take on the RBs at that point. Yeah. So we'll hit that through the stardom sit-em. Right now we'll just do news and notes, but I'm very curious of your take on that with Peyton Barber eating into some of those carries. Other news and notes, this is not only fantasy relevant stuff, but a lot of question marks with what happened with Raheem Mostert. Elijah Mitchell carried the load, but they've got Sermon there and they've got Jermichael Hasty. But the news out of camp is that expect a steady, heavy dose of Eli Mitchell. And that's what they're saying.
You're just hoping because you come out during the week and say, oh, these people spending so much money on Mitchell, and you spend, $32 on Mitchell for a part-time back in a running back by committee system, and you come out here today and say, oh, he's going to get a heavy dose. Based on what? Based on what?
Okay.
Hold on. Based on – he asked a question. Let me answer it. Based on Ian Rappaport's network insider reporting that the 49ers have reported he's carrying the load. This has nothing to do with me. Listen, I was replacing Mostert in several leagues, not going after a flyer. And I believe, and we'll get into that conversation later, $81, 80% of your fab money is too much. $30 makes sense for a guy. But either way, the news is, because there's some speculation, he was the guy last week. You know how Shanahan is. But interesting, just fantasy news is they're coming out and saying he is going to carry the load. I love that, by the way. Carry the load.
Here? Can I say something here? Okay, first off, Sermon is going to be active today. Is he going to Is he going to take over? No. Are they going to split carries?
Did anybody think that Eli Mitchell was going to take over last week?
Right. Here's my question.
Yeah.
How long have you ever seen in the past few years a running back in San Francisco stay healthy for more than a game?
They have a curse. There's a curse. There's a curse. I don't know what happens. They go to the Fisherman's Wharf. They get the New England clam chowder and the sourdough thing. They break their leg and they can't play football again as running backs in San Francisco. I don't get it. I happen to agree with you. Back to news.
Or the white?
Back to news. And what was that?
I said, is that the red or the white?
Always the white. Jamison Crowder expected to play. That is relevant. Corey Davis got a lot of looks and love in the Jets' wide receiver core, so that could eat into it. So Crowder will play. Rashad Penny is not expected to play. It's good news for Chris Carson owners, although he didn't impact anything last week. You got Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman, both expected to play this week. Jamal Williams was listed as questionable, but he was a full participant in practice Saturday. So Jamal Williams for Detroit is looking good to go.
I'm curious. I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm curious how many people out there actually have Pittman and Campbell. Do either of you guys have Pittman and Campbell?
I have Campbell on a roster, but it's a very deep roster.
And I have Pittman late again because they have to throw the ball to someone with T.Y. Hilton, but I'm not playing him anywhere until he shows me something.
All right, keep going. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, absolutely. DeAndre Swift, questionable, probably going to play, but he's listed as questionable, but he looks good to play. Terrell Williams ruled out in Detroit due to concussion.
That's big.
Very big because you've got Amari St. Brown, a couple other guys there that are very interesting to fire up. I think TJ Hawkinson has a huge week. Jonnu Smith is questionable. We got to see what happens at 11:30. That can mean big things for Hunter Henry. Peyton Barber, we talked about that. It's going to receive some of the lead back duties in week 2 with Kenyan Drake. Very interesting. Marquise Brown right now listed as questionable for Sunday's game. So let's see what happens at 11:30 when that comes out. Preston Williams, oh my God. The Dolphins lose Will Fuller, but might be getting him back. We have to see what happens at 11:30. That could be huge for the Dolphins, not necessarily a fantasy perspective. And, of course, we talked about the big news. Josh Jacobs ruled out. Zach Ertz was a little banged up, but he is going to play. That could impact Dallas Goedert. Because if Ertz was out, Goddard would look like a very, very good play. And as far as major news, that's really all to look at until we get the 11:30 update, which you'll chime in on. And then, of course, we'll do all of our pick of starters, sleepers, and lineups for this week.
Sounds great. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. I wanted to throw up the number here at 772-800-BUZZ. You can give us a call on the show if you have any questions whatsoever. We'll take your call immediately. For those of you who are shy, who don't like speaking on the air, you can go ahead and comment in YouTube Live, Facebook Live, and we will get to your comments right away. We actually have a few comments right now that we're going to address from some of our viewers, but I'm throwing this out there in case anybody has any questions. That's what we're here to do this morning. It's the 11th hour. Literally for fantasy football, and we're here to help you guys. And let's just jump into one of the first comments here.
Good first question, if you ask me.
12-team PPR. Should I go with Mitchell versus Eagles or Sanders versus the 49ers? Now, Brad, you have Sanders. Keith, you have Mitchell. What's your take, guys?
I like Mitchell. I really do. I think Eagles, by the way, they are a good-looking team right now. I really like Jalen Hurts. I think they're going to be balanced. San Francisco has a pretty good defense, if you ask me. But I just feel like with Kenneth Gainwell there, who jumped Boston Scott, Sanders has looked good. I think this is going to be close. But I am leaning towards Eli Mitchell. That is the best run team in football. You're not going to see Jalen Hurts take away goal line carries like he might from Miles Sanders and Gainwell. Gainwell had some red zone work. I think it's going to be the Eli Mitchell show today. I like Mitchell here.
What do you think, Brad?
I think out of these two for this specific week, go with Mitchell. He's not gonna get all the carries. We know that. Sanders also splitting time, although he did look pretty good last week. But it's a tough San Francisco defense. I think it's going to be a heavy throwing game for both of these teams because I think they're both going to put up points. But for this particular week, go with Mitchell, but not by much.
Yeah, it's close.
Well, somebody in has just sent us a message through Facebook Messenger, and speaking about Mitchell, they've got either T. Higgins, or Mitchell in a flex for a PPR. Let's not forget the PPR aspect of this.
I still like Mitchell. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Cincinnati. You got Mixon's looking very solid so far, and with
Chase,
Boyd, Jamar Chase, a lot of mouths to feed. Eli Mitchell's the guy. I personally like Mitchell here.
Okay, and then we have one more on the Facebook Messenger: Leonard Fournette or Callaway flex. Now I know the news came out that Rojo is healthy. He's going to be playing and probably starting this week over Fournette. Do you bank on what Fournette did last week, where he actually surprised everybody, got quite a few fantasy points, or we look at Callaway in New Orleans? Is that? I assume that's who he's talking about.
Callaway. Who's Callaway?
Well, they just put Callaway. I assume that it's New Orleans, but
Marquez
not really sure.
Marquez Callaway, the receiver.
Marquez Callaway with New Orleans, correct, against Carolina.
The number one, the guy who had 2 catches last week.
Right.
Yeah. No. And I'm only saying that. Yeah, no. I loved Callaway coming out of the preseason. Everyone was so big on him because he looked like Winston's favorite target. But in that Arthur Smith offense, that is going to be a run heavy. The problem is, you're right. You cannot trust a running back in Tampa.
Right.
So that's tough. And Rojo looks like he's out of the doghouse and he's getting there. I would probably honestly go Callaway there.
I think I would go with Callaway as well.
Yeah, I think between these two guys, you're looking at upside, and I also believe that Callaway is going to have an edge there for the upside. Last week, they only threw 150 yards. I think you're going to have a heavier throwing this week against Carolina.
Okay, here's another question. This one from Anthony. 2 weeks in, what are your impressions of Saquon Barkley and your expectations for the next 2 weeks? I'll start off by answering this question. I had high hopes for Saquon. I thought that he was going to be a steal in the draft as he kept dropping and dropping and dropping. I remember just 2 years ago, this was a guy who was going to be number 1 or number 2 pick in fantasy, right? So he has dropped, and in watching the game the other night, the Giants, although they have gotten better at pass protection, are doing so poorly at run blocking that there are no holes for the guy. And the one time where he had a hole, he looked great, right? Saquon looked good. He had that burst. He was fast. But can you rely on him week to week?
I have been very outspoken about Saquon since before the season started. I think he is a phenomenal running back, one of the best in the NFL. I didn't love that he was coming off the injury, but I figured by third or fourth week, he'd be fine. But my issue is exactly what you said, Commish. This line has not gotten better since last year. They're a halfway decent pass blocking offensive line, but they are an awful, horrifically bad run blocking offensive line. And for where you had to take him, I do not like Saquon Barkley. And this defense is not great either, so game scripting is going to tend to have to, Danny Dimes is going to have to drop back and pass a lot. So if you have Saquon Barkley, I'm not saying run out and trade him at obviously at a low point, but I'm not loving him, especially where you got him.
So here's the thing. Obviously, he hasn't looked good. Yes, he's got some burst, and I'm equating him to Zeke at the moment, right? Zeke looked good on a couple of bursts, but other than that, really didn't look good.
Another bad offensive line.
Right. But next week, Barkley has Atlanta. All right. Barkley was like his guy in the draft who kept falling. And it's like, oh, good, somebody else took him. I don't have to take that chance on him. That's kind of who he was in the draft this year, right? He was going in the second rounds. And if you had like the 14 pick and he's still there, it's like, how do you not take him? But they have not looked good. They've looked better with the pass. The next 2 weeks, Atlanta, I think you got to give him one more opportunity. But then going against New Orleans, who's looked very good. if he doesn't do good next week against Atlanta, it may be time to.
Honestly, if you want my honest opinion, he should.
No, we want you to lie.
Okay, so here's my lie. Is I would get him off of that good week from Atlanta and trade him. If you could get like a Chris Carson for Barkley, trade him on a high note after Atlanta. I would do that in a heartbeat. I do not have faith in his numbers this year. Before he got hurt last year, he looked terrible. Not he looked terrible. That run game looked terrible. Even before he got hurt.
Yeah, he didn't look good either.
All right, so we've got Kenneth on the phone. He's been waiting very patiently. Kenneth, how you doing today?
Pretty good. I got a couple of updates here on a couple of players that might be of interest.
Okay.
Chicago Bear left tackle Jason Peters listed as questionable with a quad that limited him last week is expected to play against Cincinnati per Ian Rappaport.
Okay.
Jamison Crowder is questionable with a groin injury, but is also expected to play against New England. Las Vegas Raider Rodgers limited with a hamstring this past week is listed as questionable, but head coach John Gruden was optimistic that he would play. 49er defensive end Eric Armstead, defensive tackle Javon Kinlaw are expected to play against Philadelphia.
All right. Kenneth, we appreciate that. And what we're going to do is at 11:30, when some of the actives and inactives come out, we'll start bringing them across the air. We don't want to go too in depth on some of these defensive players and their status, but we really do appreciate it. Do you have a question for today, or you just wanted to give us some updates?
I already posed my question.
Oh, okay. All right.
Awesome.
And
all right.
I just wanted to primarily give y'all the updates that I just happened to see.
Thank you.
Right,
we appreciate that as always, Kenneth. Thank you for calling.
Yep. Keep those questions coming in, Commish. I can't wait to hear about your startums, sit-ums for quarterbacks today.
So we have more questions coming in here.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, so we'll get to the stardom sit-em, and I appreciate that. But what I want to do is that we really encourage people to ask us their fantasy questions. That's what we're here for. So let's jump to some more of those questions. Drake or Fournette as my second running back after Eckler. Personally, I've got to go with Drake. You're not in a running back committee. You got to go start the guy who's starting. He'll also be catching some passes out of the backfield. So we like Drake in that position. James, thank you for the question. 10-team PPR needs 1 for the flex. Mike Williams, TJ Hawkinson, Jamar Chase. Wow, that's tough.
Need 1 for the flex. Wow, these are really good options. But Hawkinson he's the number 1 receiver.
He's the number 1. And Terrell Williams is gone, even if he wasn't going to be playing. And that's going to be a shootout. They're playing Green Bay. I think it's going to be the Hawkinson show. So I love Hawkinson.
I even have questions this week with a flex position and potentially starting Chase. But yeah, I mean, you want to kind of see him do it a couple weeks in a row before you throw him into your lineup. And he looked good last week. But as far as the steadiness, I think you got to go Hawkinson here.
That's the key term is steadiness, right? So the ceiling on Chase is pretty high.
Yeah.
He has the opportunity, but like you said, we don't know what that pattern is going to look like. You got to go with Hawkinson. Also, point in Hawk here as your flex. Not a lot of people start tight ends in flex, but when you have the opportunity to have someone like Hawkinson, I'm curious, James, who your at tight end is in that position that you're starting today.
Hawk is your flex, yeah.
Maybe they don't have tight end.
All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to jump into start sit, but in the meantime, if anybody has any questions, give us a call, 772-800-BUZZ, or go ahead and ask the question in the comments section of YouTube Live or Facebook Live, and we'll jump right in. We're going to start with the quarterback stardom. Now, look, we say this every time. We say this every year. We say this every week. I'm not going to tell you to start Patrick Mahomes. If you have Patrick Mahomes and you don't start him and it's not a bye week, there's a problem and you shouldn't be watching this show, all right? You know who the studs are. You're going to start Mahomes every week. You're going to start Josh Allen every week. We're not going to go through that. This week, though, normally, by the way, on that list would be Aaron Rodgers, right? But after what happened last week, is Aaron Rodgers an automatic start week to week? I can't answer that question, but I can answer the question of whether or not he's going to rebound, because the best cure for a struggling quarterback, guys, is playing against the Detroit Lions.
Right,
That's
exactly.
exactly what is happening today with Aaron Rodgers. The Lions have surrendered. Listen to this stat, guys. The Lions have surrendered the most points to quarterbacks since week 9 of 2020. Put Rodgers in your lineup. Start him. Don't worry about it. This week against the Lions, it's Monday night, which, by the way, Rodgers on Monday night is always spectacular to watch, right? I'm looking at 300 yards plus, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions this week for Aaron Rodgers, guys. He's a lock. Start Aaron Rodgers. Tom Brady, coming off of that tear against Dallas, is going to do the same against Atlanta. We know how great he was last week, but keep him in your lineup because they're playing against the Falcons, who's we know about their defense. They've already given up 29 points to Jalen Hurts last week.
Yep.
And has given up the 7th most points to quarterbacks since week 9. So between Rodgers and Brady, if you have him, you got to start him. And Brad, the guy that you got because I talked you out of Lamar, Matthew Stafford against the Colts. And people think that the Colts defense is so great and people were drafting them pretty high. You know what? Their defensive backfield is really questionable. And when you look back over the last 10 games, that Colts defensive backfield has given up more than 20 points a game to fantasy quarterbacks. And that includes last week, right? They gave up 27 points and 4 touchdowns to Russell Wilson. So if you have Stafford, he is a lock this week. He's going to be a superstar this week on your roster. And finally, Jameis Winston, 5 touchdowns, really? In your debut as a Saints quarterback, 5 touchdowns? I know he didn't have a lot of yards, but who cares? When you can put up 5 touchdowns, that's really all I need to say. So, look, they're playing against the Panthers, and in their last 9 games, even going back into last year, they've surrendered 21 touchdown passes to opposing quarterbacks. So, my locks today: Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Matt Stafford, Jameis Winston.
Right,
who am I staying away from this week? Carson
hang on.
Wentz? Yeah.
Before you go there, we got a couple more. We got another question here. First of all, James said his tight end is Kittle.
Oh, my God. Kittle and Hawkinson?
Nice. Yeah. So
nice job, James.
Wow.
Then Ned, who's on YouTube, Gordon or Gaskin, PPR, and then pick 3: Debo, Deontay, Cooks, Cooper, or Godwin. Interesting. Okay, so let me get the running back here: Gordon or Gaskin. This is a tough one. I was going to talk about Javonte Williams in my start sit. I got to go Gaskin here. I know they're playing Buffalo. Buffalo's got a tough defense, but Gordon, besides the fact that he had that one long run, he had like another 9 carries for like 25 yards or something like that. It wasn't a huge day from Gordon. Now, he looked good on that one long run, but Javonte Williams outcarried him 14 to, I believe, 9 or 11. I think it was 10 or 11 in carries. So I'm not real high on Gordon. He's going to get some carries, but I think Williams will be overtaking that overall. So I go with Gaskin here because he's more of the workhorse.
And I agree. I've got Gaskin on my team, plus representing Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a homer pick, but Dolphins are most likely going to be playing from behind. So when you're talking about PPR, if this is PPR, expect Gaskin to get at least 5 to 6 catches out of the backfield. I think that's going to be a dink and dunk kind of game today, and Gaskin is going to be the recipient of that. Pick 3.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to disagree just because I think they're going to need Malcolm Brown in a lot for pass blocking. I hate where my mindset is going on this, but I do believe they are going to be playing a lot from behind, and Brown is the best pass blocking running back on that team. And I like the Broncos matchup against the Jaguars, and I see Gordon possibly getting 15 to 18 totes in this game. So I don't want it to be this way, but I'm picking Gordon here, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think you're going to see Gordon get closer to 9 or 10, and Javonte Williams probably closer to 15 plus.
Well,
very similar to last week.
All right, so let's pick 3 here between Debo, Deontay,
Jeez.
Cooks, Cooper, and Jesus, that is pretty. You got to go Amari Cooper. You can't not play Amari Cooper.
I agree.
What you saw there,
Especially with Gallup out.
And the same with Godwin. So to me, it comes down to which 2 out of Deontay, Brandon Cooks, and Debo Samuel are you sitting? Deontay is the first one that pops out at me just because, and yes, I am a fan of Deontay Johnson. I think he is out of the triumvirate of receivers in Pittsburgh that he is the guy. But that is the issue, right? He is playing in a wide receiver committee where they're going to be throwing to Claypool. They're going to be throwing to Juju. So, to me, whereas Cooks is the only person catching passes in Houston. Right. And Debo, who normally is an afterthought, had such a monster week last week. It would be hard to bench him this week. What do you guys think out of those 3? Who were the 2 you're sitting?
To me, it's between Debo and Cooks because Deontay, there's just too many mouths to feed there. The big question mark is what's the deal with Ayuk? Because you got Ayuk, Kittle, and Debo. Samuel had that monster week last week. Is that an aberration or is that what's going to happen? What we do know is that Brandon Cooks is the guy, and they don't have much of they really don't. I don't care what Ingram did last week. I'm honestly, just because of the floor, I love his floor. I honestly would take Brandon Cooks here because I think he's going to be the guy and get peppered with targets.
I think they're going against Cleveland. I mean, he only had 7 targets last week. He just made the most of them, going for 132.
They didn't have to. They were crushing them. They're not going to be able to do that against Cleveland.
Exactly. So I think Cleveland's got obviously a much better defense than Jacksonville. I'm going with Debo here. I know they're going against Philly, but you take a guy who had such a monster week, you have to ride that horse for a little bit to see if he can do it again.
That's why I would also go with Deontay this week. They are playing against Vegas. So if you're asking me, and I'm sorry, Ned, that you're not getting a definitive answer, but I'm going Debo, and I'm going Cooper, and I'm going Godwin.
I'm sure glad we helped him that time.
Yeah.
We really gave you some clarity there, man.
We gave you 2 out of 3.
All right. Well, we appreciate the comment, and if anybody has any comments, give us a call, or you can comment in YouTube Live or Facebook Live, like everybody's been doing, and we'll get right to it. And we're going to finish off our sit-em for quarterback. If you have these guys, sit them. Carson Wentz, we don't have to go into too much detail about that. Matt Ryan might be surprising, but look, they're going against a Bucs D that last week, I know they gave up a lot of yards to Dak, but Matt Ryan is not Dak Prescott, and he looked terrible last week against a very suspect Eagles defense. So if you have Matt Ryan and you have an opportunity to start somebody else, do it. Sam Darnold, people are like, oh, but he did all right. No, he's playing against the Saints this week. Stay away from Sam Darnold. And despite the fact that I am wearing his jersey and I believe in this man, Tua, do not start Tua this week. It is until we see what's going to happen with that Buffalo defense and with the Miami Dolphins offensive scheme. I'm going to wear the jersey today, but I am going to sit him. So if you have Tua, hold on to him, but don't start him this week. Awesome. What about running backs, guys?
Before we do that, just one quick question. As a start sit, I believe it's a full PPR. Javonte Williams or Kenyan Drake? It's a tough one. I'm going to go with Drake here just because even though they're talking about Peyton Barber getting mixed in there, it looks like it's going to probably be majoritively his backfield. So just based on volume, I'm going to go Kenyan Drake here.
Yeah, I'm going to – man, this is a tough one for me because I really like Javonte Williams this week against Jacksonville. I mean, Mark Ingram looked good against Jacksonville last week. So I do really think that Williams is going to have a good game. I mean, he might have 15 rushes for like 100 yards and at least 1 touchdown. That's kind of what I'm looking at from Williams this week. Drake.
Look, guys, what did the rookie wonder kid do against Pittsburgh last week? I'm sorry, against I'm all over the place. Against Buffalo. Against Buffalo. Okay, so I have.
Are you talking about Najee Harris?
Najee, right?
I have it mixed up. my point is Javonte isn't a running back by committee. Drake is not.
Correct.
Is that enough to elevate Drake? Plus, we know that Drake is a catching running back.
That's why, this is a tough one. Drake, I think, just because Jacobs is out, I know they're talking about Peyton Barber. I mean, honestly, I think it's going to be Drake at least 70% of the snaps.
And this is what I was getting at. What about the fact that Drake is playing against Pittsburgh is what I was getting at. Buffalo,
got you. That's tough. Pittsburgh's D is good, but they're going to have to be, dinking and dunking underneath.
Yeah.
And that's going to be Drake.
Right. Yeah, so I would go with Drake in this case. I don't think the difference is going to be more than 5 points between the two, but I would go with Drake in this case.
We're going to go with. I'm going with Drake as well. Not sure about 2020 there.
All right.
No, I said Drake out of the gate. Yes.
Oh, you did. Okay, got you. All right, and Ned says thanks, even though we did not give him an incredible amount of clarity on that one. Ned,
I think that was
that works out.
That might have been a sarcastic.
No, I don't think so. Ned, let us know who you end up starting. And let us know how that works out for you.
All right, so let's talk about running backs, who we're starting. I mean, we're answering a lot of these questions, but do you have any guys that are kind of like locks other than the obvious starters?
I mean, there's tons of obvious ones. I don't really have a ton. Najee Harris, I just wanted to talk about him because people may have been a little bit skeptical after his week last week. But honestly, he played 100% of the downs.
And that's big. That's a big deal.
He is the guy. He went against Buffalo. Buffalo, we know, has a good defense, right? This week, he gets Las Vegas. He's going to have a big week. I'm not going to 100% guarantee it. I'm going to 95% guarantee that Najee Harris has a big week this week, obviously barring injury. Go with Harris. Just like you said about Rodgers, he is the guy there. He played every single – I don't know that there's another running back in the league that played every single offensive snap. I just don't know if there is one. Anyway, again, I'm going to go back to Javonte Williams. I think he's going to have a big week. I know that it's a split committee, but so is Chubb and Hunt, right? I just think that they're both going to have their cake this week between Williams and Gordon. I just think Williams will have a bigger piece of it. And that should equate to a good game. Now I'm going to bring up two guys, and these guys I know nobody's going to sit them. I understand that. I just want people to understand where I'm coming from here. Zeke Elliott. Okay. I look back through all last year. Now I know he moved up. He kept moving up boards this year up into the top 5, 6 players picked. In his last 16 games, going back to all last season, he has a total of 2 100-yard games. And in those 100-yard games, it was 103 and 105. It's not like it was 150, 160. Has he hit his wall? He did not look great last week. He looked good on one run that I saw.
Yeah.
And other than
another talented running back with a bad run blocking offensive line. I don't even think it's just the line. I think it's the game script. They are a throw team. The only reason that I guess maybe he gets a little bit of an uptick is because Michael Gallup is out. Okay, but other than that, but their tight ends look good, Schultz, and the receivers look great. I'm not seeing it. And I know you're not going to bench him, especially week 2, but just be warned, he may have hit his wall. The other guy, Derrick Henry. I know we were talking about him preseason. This guy's got like 8,000 carries over the past 3 years, right? He did not look good last week. 3 yards a rush, 3.2 yards a rush, whatever he had last week.
But that's also not common.
I understand that's not common. They lost their
and he's
offensive coordinator.
Notoriously slow starter. That is just how
100%. Yes, but the offense didn't seem to have an identity. And going against Seattle's going to put up points, and they're going to have to try to keep up, or they're going to try to slow down the game, right? Which is good for Henry. But if Seattle gets out to a lead, I mean, I just don't see Henry having a good week this week.
I think Chandler Jones just wants to play Tennessee 16 games a season. That was incredible. 5 sacks and 3 tackles for losses. All right. Very nicely done on the running backs, Cyclop.
Hold on, just hitting the wire right now. We have some of the inactives that there's really not too many surprises, but just want to bring up that the receivers for the Jets, Jamison Crowder and Denzel Mims, both inactive today. So look at Davis as really a play on the receiving side as being the only guy who's going to be able to catch passes in New York. Yes, they have the rookie as well. But with Crowder and Mims out, I think you have a good play.
So here's an interesting question for you guys, because I thought Crowder was going to be in. It was lending towards that. In a flex spot, do you play Corey Davis or do you play Jamal Williams?
Is it a PPR?
Half
PPR, I go with Williams. PPR, I go with Davis.
With Davis. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. We have another question here. Morning, gents. 2 questions. Both full PPR, Deontay Johnson or Debo as wide receiver 2. And in the flex, Henderson or Mitchell. Oh, wow. That's good problems
That's a good
to
team.
have. So, yeah, full PPR personally, until Ayuk shows up and plays through that hamstring, he's going to play. I'm Debo over Deontay.
Wait, is this Trey Sermon asking us the question here? Because wouldn't he know whether or not Mitchell's going to be playing more than he is? I'm concerned about this.
That's so funny. And then Henderson or Mitchell, that's tough. I really do like Eli Mitchell, but and I got to tell you, McVay was a little evasive when he was asked about Sony Michel's usage and if there is going to be an uptick. There is no question Henderson is the guy, and they really liked him, and he had the majority of snaps. I got to tell you, though, if pressed Henderson or Mitchell, I'm going Mitchell. They're a better.
I'm going Henderson here.
They're a better running team.
Of course, we know you like Mitchell. In fact, I'm going to buy you a T-shirt that says "I love Mitchell more than
I
life
like
itself."
San Francisco.
So, yes,
running.
if anybody out there is going to call or put a comment and ask us a question about Mitchell, Keith is yes. It could be Mitchell or Dalvin Cook. Mitchell or Chris McCaffrey. Mitchell.
The other thing is the Colts have a good defensive line.
Oh, stop! It's going to be Henderson here, by the way, for PPR.
Wait, hold on. Okay. I want to throw a dollar bet on this.
All right, get your dollar.
Henderson versus Mitchell.
You're going to lose.
I like my odds. Done.
Oh, he had one
upside
ready.
down. Here we go. We're ready to go, guys.
Love it.
All right. Another inactive that came across. Believe it or not, Deshaun Watson with the Houston Texans.
What?
I'm just joking there, but yes, he is inactive. But we know we've heard this during the week, but I just wanted to clarify that Odell Beckham is inactive this week for the Cleveland Browns. As more inactives come up, we will be bringing them to you.
I don't know if we finished answering the question. I'm a Debo fan this week. I know again the consistency with Deontay. But Debo is coming off this big week. He's got a good connection with Garoppolo. Go with Debo. And Henderson or Mitchell, I'm going Henderson. I think they're going to work other running backs into the backfield in San Francisco, as Shanahan always does. And Henderson was 17 for 70 last week with a touchdown. Also had a couple catches. They're going against the Colts. The Colts are 24th, I believe 23rd or 24th in D right now, and they have defensive back problems. I'm going with Henderson all day here.
I'm with you, Brad.
And this, by the way, is not Trey Sermon, as we just have it verified. Sorry about that. But not everybody can be Trey Sermon. All right, so let's take a look at our wide receiver starts and sits for the week. A lot of it based on some of the information. I liked Deebo Samuel anyway. I think he does have a nice connection with Garoppolo. So we know you're starting, Javonte, Tyreek. We don't have to qualify that, but the guys that might be on the cusp, I like Deebo Samuel. I like DJ Moore. I know it's going against a tough New Orleans defense, but he showed a very nice chemistry with Sam Darnold. I also like Cortland Sutton this week with Jerry Jeudy out. I know they eased him back in, but he's a full go. And I like Teddy Bridgewater, looking for him early and often. Antonio Brown, I know there's 3 mouths to feed there, but if you look at the chemistry that AB has had with Brady going back to the last 5 weeks of last season and into this season, I love that, especially going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Fire up T. Higgins as well, going against Chicago. I love Brandon Cooks this week going against Cleveland. He is the guy there. We already talked about Deebo Samuel. I like Jarvis Landry this week, even though that's a run-first team. But with OBJ out, he is going to be by far the most involved wide receiver there. And here is one of my interesting starts of the week. I don't think it's going to go crazy. And this is not just a homer pick, but with Will Fuller out, I don't know that Preston Williams is playing. I think it's going to be a heavy, steady diet of Jalen Waddle against that Buffalo Bills defense that's going to blitz. I see a lot of 5, 6, 7-yard slants over the middle to Jalen Waddle. Could be targeted 8, 9, 10 times in this game, in a game where they're going to have to be coming from behind. So I like those guys. Guys that I'm looking at sitting, I'm sitting Russell Gage. I do not trust Atlanta yet. I do not trust Matt Ryan yet. And he's a guy that's looked at the way Calvin Ridley was looked at last year, that second receiver role. Don't like him. I am also sitting Julio Jones. I need to see Tennessee get right now. I did not like what I saw out of that passing game last week. I know they're going to correct themselves. I still think that is the A.J. Brown show. So if you have Julio Jones, he's on a bubble, and he's someone that you're possibly looking to fire up. I don't like that as someone to play. I want to let my sits down over here.
Let me just break in here that Julio is going up against the Seattle defense, which has been giving up a lot of yards to receivers. I'm not a sit on Julio. To me, a sit is somebody that you really have to sit no matter who you have, right? Like, you assume that you're going to have much better receivers. So in my opinion, before sitting Julio, it depends who else you have. I don't think Julio is that far down the list that he would be considered a sit this week. But if you're comparing him to some of the other guys you mentioned earlier that you're starting 100%, I'm with you.
And that's what I'm talking about. So to me, they are Julio, Cortland Sutton, DJ Moore, Debo are all in that range, that lower end, second tier to third tier. That's where Julio is being drafted, honestly. I'm starting Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton, all these guys over Julio Jones. It always depends on your team.
All right.
So I have a question. Seth from South Florida has a question. He wants to know whether out of these 4 receivers, who are you benching? DJ Moore, A.J. Brown, Cortland Sutton, or Jalen Waddle?
Wow, out of those 4,
DJ Moore, A.J. Brown, Cortland Sutton, Jalen Waddle. Who are you sitting?
Wow. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm benching Waddle.
I would probably bench Waddle. In that grouping, I would probably bench Waddle.
Yeah, that's what he told me he did. So just making sure.
Okay, we actually have another question that came across here from Ricky. Okay, put it up here. Who should I start, Juju or Kirk? And he also asked Pittman, but he let him down last week. And both of those other guys are definitely.
Is this PPR or half PPR? So
question.
Let us know on that. What do you guys think? Do you go with Christian Kirk, who had the hot hand last week?
Well, Kirk had 5 targets, and again, made the most of them. 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. Goes against Minnesota, and you know Minnesota. It's a full PPR. Minnesota. These games are turning into shootouts, right? So out of these 2, I mean, I probably go with Kirk this week over Juju. Again, I think there's a 1 and 2 there, where Juju it's a 1, 2, and 3. So just based on that's I'm going with Kirk.
What do you think, Keith? I'm leaning toward Juju only because they're playing against the Raiders defense, and we saw what happened to them on Monday night. So you tell me. I like Juju. I think this is close. I think Kirk, you're not going to know from week to week what's happening. So
you got to be the tiebreaker here. So we got Juju, Kirk.
I'm going Juju as well. I think it's the DeAndre Hopkins show over there. There's no question. Kyler Murray does a great job of moving things with his. I think the floor is better with Juju. I agree with the Raiders secondary. They are they're very exploitable, and I think Juju should get 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 grabs this week. So I just like his floor better.
Let me say this, guys. And you'll see as the show goes on, and for people who have been following us for the last 2 years, they've seen that we do a lot of the wide receiver cornerback matchups, and we see based on who's covering who, but that's really not going to kick in until games 4 or 5. Right now, the matchup for Kirk is not great. We know that Minnesota has shootouts, but Kirk one-on-one in Minnesota, I think the matchup with Juju is better. But as we move forward in the weeks, we'll be able to see which cornerbacks are actually covering which receivers once we start understanding the schemes. But for right now.
All right, so we got 2 for Juju, 1 for Kirk. We'll see how it plays out. I wrote that one down.
Here's another.
Ricky also asked Hines or Drake. I'm going Drake here.
Yeah.
Just because of the volume.
Agreed.
Hines look good. He's going to get catches. He's going to be in there, but I'm going to go with Drake.
Yeah.
Here's another really tough one. You got to pick 2 here. And we're looking at CEH at Baltimore, Damian Harris at the Jets, or Eli Mitchell at the
Okay, well, we know what Keith's picking, so don't even bother.
You know at least one of them. You're goddamn right. At least one of them is Eli. But that's tough because Damian Harris, minus that fumble, actually looked really good. That's such a good offensive line that they have. New England's going to control this game. They got a great defense. This could easily be the Damian Harris show. But, I mean, how do you sit CEH? It's against Baltimore, and that is not the same Baltimore defense that you saw last year. They lost some big – so I got to sit Damian Harris here and go with CEH and Eli.
Yeah, I actually have Harris a few spots above CEH this week. So I'm going to go with Harris. It's against the Jets. They're just going to try to run it down their throat. You might see like 15 run plays to start the game, right? You never know with Belichick what he's going to do.
Well, I have to disagree here. I have to go with CEH and Mitchell. Damian Harris, do you know how many touchdowns he's had over the past year?
Probably like 1.
How about 0?
0, yeah.
0. He is not used on the goal line. I don't know why, but he's not. And he hasn't gotten any touchdowns. Yes, he gets the yards. Maybe he'll get 70, 80 yards today. I don't know if he's going to see the end zone. I think you have a higher ceiling with CEH and with Mitchell.
He did have 23 attempts last week.
You can't make fun of me with Mitchell and then go picking him, Commish. You can't do that.
Him over a Patriot. Yeah.
You can't do that.
Running back.
You can't do that. You can't triple stamp and double stamp.
It's done.
I know I'm going to come back. We're going to come back on Tuesday night, and I'm just going to have a big foot in my mouth because Mitchell's going to go off.
You could have like 220 today with like 3
touchdowns,
right?
Yeah, and then the whole show will be, I told you so. We'll see, because it goes both ways. Kind of like Keith. All right, so what do we have here? Have Cardinals defense, but I could pick up Kansas City or the Bears. Should I stick with the Cardinals? How many sacks do you want to have on your defense today, right?
Ride that hot hand. Ride the Chandler Jones train for now. It's defense. I don't know how big the scoring is, but they came out and looked very good against a very good Tennessee team. So ride that hot hand.
Minnesota. It is Minnesota, and Brad was talking about, the shootout. I have Cardinals ranked 12 right now for this coming week. Who are the other? Kansas City or the Bears? In both cases, I have them ranked 14 and 15. So all signs to me point towards starting the Cardinals this week.
Even against Minnesota, that's probably I mean, the Bears get Cincinnati. Yeah, I think you got to stay with the Cardinals and just see what happens, even though Minnesota's going to put up some points.
Yeah.
And Kirk Cousins under pressure is not very good. So
that's true.
If they could get the pressure, then we'll see what happens.
Another. Actually, this one's an easy one.
This is easy.
PPR Hawkinson versus the Packers or Cook versus Cowboys. That's a no-brainer. Hawkinson, to me, after Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller, he is by far the next best-looking tight end out there. So Hawkinson all day long.
Yeah.
Debo or Coop? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm saying being the number one option on a team for receiving, you go with that guy, 100%.
Debo or Cooper Kupp? Now that is interesting because, and by the way, I'm not we saw what happened last week where Stafford peppered Cooper Kupp with 1 million targets. I don't think that's going to be the narrative every week. That was last week. Don't worry about Robert Woods. I know he had that token touchdown to save his day. Robert Woods is going to be just fine. But this is an interesting one because Debo looked very, very good, as did Cooper Kupp. Let me just look at the matchups. Do you remember the matchups there?
Kupp goes against Indy.
Hey, Jake, can you let us know if this is PPR?
It is full PPR.
It is full PPR. Yeah. Let me say this while you're looking it up, and I know Jake, and Jake actually has his own sports management company. So if anybody out there is listening and they're looking for some type of management for their the college players now, they're able to do brand advertising for the college players. That's what Jake does. Okay. So anybody out there, let us know, and we'll hook you up with Jake. What did you find with regard to Kupp versus Debo?
I'll tell you, here, I actually like Debo Samuel here, and I'll tell you why. The Rams are going against the Colts. I do not believe yet in Carson Wentz. I think the Rams, with that defense, are going to be able to control the game. I don't see an enormous amount of throwing having to happen here. I think they're going to control the game with Darrell Henderson. I think that Philly, I really like Jalen Hurts. I think that is a powerful, very high-scoring offense. And I think that San Francisco is going to come out and have to stay with them and just do more throwing, and Debo is the guy. So from the game narrative and the volume perspective, because this to me is a pick-em, I would go with Debo Samuel.
This is a complete toss-up. Yeah, it's a toss-up. You may as well flip a coin. Obviously, Kupp looked really good last week. So did Debo. Man, it's tough.
While you're thinking about it, I'm just going to say definitively it's Kupp. Not that Debo's going to have a bad week. I think Debo has the higher ceiling like he did last week, and I'm a Debo guy. I've got Debo on my team. I love Debo. But Cooper Kupp, to me, is just a catch machine, and they already have that chemistry. He already has that chemistry with Stafford. Yeah. I got to go with Cooper Kupp here. So, sorry, Jake, we're kind of split. Brad's gonna break the tie.
So we're gonna have 2 Debos, 1 Kupp.
Did you really? Seriously?
Oh man!
Oh my God! Where's HR? Where's HR?
So there you have it, Jake.
I'll tell you what sucks is we could have been talking about Gurley. It could have been 2 Gurleys, 1 Kupp.
Right.
That's a topic for another day, and not what you think I was going to say. But with regard to free agents like Gurley and people that were so good are just not on a team, you know. And then someone like Eli Mitchell is. So, all right, let's talk about tight ends, guys.
Tight ends. Yeah, let me get to my page there. Interesting, by the way, and they're talking about Josh Gordon. The NFL is looking at reinstating him, a Josh Gordon sighting possibly. Very, very interesting. All right, so
is he worth a pickup, guys?
Josh Gordon?
I say no. Yeah. I mean, look, there's so many receivers that are out there, and even in deep leagues, you have receivers who are scoring points every week who are on the free agent list. So,
yeah, I mean, just from an NFL perspective, it's just interesting to see that guy back in the league. Yeah. All right, so for tight ends, again, you know who you're firing up. You know the Wallers, the Kittles, the Kelseys, the Hawkinsons. And honestly, this guy is probably going to start getting into that conversation until he proves wrong, but that's Gronk. I mean, not only did he look great last week, but he's going up against Atlanta. So I love that start. Also, take a look at Tyler Higbee at Indy. She showed a nice little chemistry with Matt Stafford. Noah Fant gets a big boost with Jerry Jeudy out. I think Noah Fant and Tim Patrick are going to be the 2 biggest benefactors, along, of course, with Courtland Sutton. But I really like Fant this week. He actually led the team last year in receptions, and I like his matchup against the Jaguars. As far as other tight ends that you might want to look at starting, I like Jared Cook versus Dallas. That's going to be a high-scoring game, so Herbert's going to be slinging the ball all over the place. And other than that, you guys know who else you should be starting. Guys that you want to consider sitting. from the tight end standpoint. My first, and I hate having to say this, but until he shows otherwise, it's Mike Gaseki. This was a guy that people had a lot of hopes for that could possibly get his name into the tight end one conversation, be a top 10 tight end this year. It didn't show at week one. Until he shows anything different. Buffalo has some good linebacking as well. I'm not starting Gaseki until he shows me something. Same thing with Zach Ertz. He's a little banged up. He is going to play, but that is the Dallas Goedert show there. And Zach Ertz got a few grabs, but certainly better options out there other than that. And a lot of people are talking about starting this guy. He's listed as a top tight end this week. Personally, he's not for me, and that's Robert Tonyan. He had some monster games last year, but overall, as a consistency, he wasn't getting the targets and the grabs consistently enough last year. So that's a show me first before I'm willing to start him. I have other guys. I've got Cole Kmet that I'm putting it over Robert Tonyan. That's an interesting start as well. The guy had 7 targets last week. So those are my starts and sits for tight ends.
So Tonyan was a touchdown machine last year. That's where he ended up in the top of tight ends. Right?
But he had one game with like 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah. Gaseki's on pace this year to have 0 catches so far.
Right. Not funny. Funny, not funny.
It's not funny. He had 3 targets. I mean, we'll see how that plays out.
Okay, so Seth from Weston, Florida has another question in a half PPR. He wants to know, is Gaskin, Claypool, Charco, Julio, pick one for flex?
Pick one. Shark.
Yeah, I'd probably go Shark there too.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm between Gaskin and Shark, but I would be between.
I like Gaskin, but the game scares me. I would like to think that the Dolphins are going to be able to bottle up Allen. I think it's going to be a play from behind, and I see a lot of Ahmed and Malcolm Brown in there.
Okay. So we're kind of running out of time here. We won't go into too much detail, but I just have 2 defenses to consider starting. Obviously, the rule of thumb in fantasy football is if your team plays the Jets, you start that defense. And today, it's the Patriots. And not only is it against the Jets, but it's a Bill Belichick defense against a rookie quarterback. And we've seen year over year what happens when that happens.
And the inactives.
And the inactives as well. So that's a lock. The other lock, which might be surprising to some people, are the Packers, right? Their defense didn't look great last week. In fact, they looked terrible last week. But this week, just like we said, the cure for Aaron Rodgers was playing against Detroit. That's the cure for the Packers defense. They're playing against the Lions. You got to go with the Packers defense this week. So Patriots, Packers, if you have those defenses, you go ahead and you start those defenses. Was that from the coach, Brad? Letting you know the inactives for the week?
What was that?
Was that from your coach letting us know the inactives? Was that?
Yeah.
That was the insider phone call.
The insider call, yeah. I can't tell you.
Okay, it's all right. All right.
Insider.
Well, look, we're running out of time here. The week is about to start in an hour. We're gonna have kickoff for week 2.
So let me interrupt you real quick here. You had that Shark question. He had 12 targets last week.
Yeah.
3 catches.
Yeah.
He made the most of the 3 catches, but 12 targets. I mean, obviously it's Lawrence there. God, you got to like 12 targets in a game. So he does want, they are going to throw. They're going to have to, because they're going to be behind for the most part. So I'm going to go with Shark there. I looked it up.
I agree as well. Here's an interesting question. Who leads the Jaguars' backfield in carries this week? Hyde or Robinson?
God, it better be Robinson.
How was that for a shocker to the NFL fantasy world last week?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Guys, and just another quick inactive before we end it here. Marshawn Lattimore, the star Pro Bowl cornerback for the New Orleans Saints, is inactive today. So if that's going to impact whether or not you're starting any of the receivers against New Orleans or you're starting New Orleans defense, we just wanted to throw that out there for you. Guys, well, it sounds like it for week 2. We
Awesome.
will be back Tuesday night to go over what was, what should have happened over the weekend. We'll
All of
talk
our
about
dollar
how
bets.
bad Mitchell was. We'll collect our dollars, and we will go from there. So, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. And we're going to see you Tuesday night.
Hey.
Keith, Brad, last word.
I'm going to start my longest hour of the week between now and 1 o'clock, waiting for football to start. But good show. Thank you, everybody, for all the questions. We appreciate it. Keep them coming. Even if you have them as you're listening, messenger us or put it on Facebook. We're happy to answer them all day long.
All right, guys.
Absolutely. Good luck, everyone, this week. Fins up.